Turns out script. Physiological age and child maltreatment. Your body keeps time in ways you can't feel. Not just seconds and minutes, but at the cellular level. The constant hum of systems checking themselves, balancing themselves, keeping you alive. There's a biological clock running inside you right now that has almost nothing to do with your actual age. And scientists just found that if you experienced abuse as a kid, your clock might be running a lot faster than it should be. We're talking years ahead. Decades in some cases. But here's the question. If your body ages faster, does that mean you can't fix it? We've known for a long time that bad things that happen to kids stick with them. Traumatized children grow up to have higher rates of heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune problems. The whole package of things your body does to keep itself running smoothly seems to get scrambled. But for decades, we didn't really understand the mechanism. Was it just stress? Was it behavioral? Like, did trauma survivors just make worse health choices? Or was something deeper happening at a biological level, something written into the system itself? This new research, published in May 2026 in Molecular Psychiatry, doesn't just answer that question. It suggests that childhood maltreatment might actually speed up the aging process itself. Not metaphorically, literally. This work came from a team spread across universities from Penn State to Columbia to the University of Rochester, led by Aiden Shalev, and colleagues including researchers like Christina Heim from Berlin and Joshua Knoll from Rochester. Shalev's group has spent years building something called physiological age, basically a way to measure how old your body actually is, not how many candles fit on your birthday cake. The team pulled together data on hundreds of young people who'd experienced documented maltreatment, and then looked at their bodies at the molecular level. The study came out just recently, and it's getting attention for one very specific reason. They found something that shouldn't be there if we're right about how resilience works. Here's what they actually did. They took young people, we're talking adolescents and young adults, and they looked at something called homeostatic dysregulation. That's science speak for your body's ability to keep itself balanced is broken. Imagine your body is a tightrope walker. Normally, the walker adjusts constantly, tiny micro-movements left and right, keeping equilibrium. Homeostasis is all those micro-adjustments happening automatically. Dysregulation is when those adjustments stop working smoothly. The researchers measured multiple biological systems at once. Things like cortisol levels, inflammation markers, heart rate variability, metabolic function. Not just one thing, but dozens of measurements that paint a picture of how hard your body is working just to stay standing. Then they plugged all that data into an algorithm that's been validated in aging research. They basically asked, based on how dysregulated this person's body is, how old would we estimate they are? And they compared that physiological age to their actual chronological age. Some kids were years ahead. Some were dramatically ahead. The results were striking. Young people who'd experienced maltreatment showed significantly higher physiological age. We're talking on average 4 to 7 years older biologically than their actual age, depending on the specific measurements used. But here's where it gets interesting. It wasn't just that they were aging faster. It was specifically that their regulatory systems, the things your body uses to keep itself in balance, were falling apart. Their immune systems were stuck in a kind of low-grade panic mode. Their stress hormone systems weren't resetting properly after stress. Their inflammatory markers were elevated even when they were at rest. Think of it this way. If your body is supposed to coast when you're safe, these kids' bodies were still revving the engine, all the time. By age 16, some of them had bodies that looked more like 23. By 20, they looked closer to 30. The effect was real and consistent, but, and this is important, effect sizes weren't enormous. We're not talking about every single abused child turning into an instant biological senior citizen. There was variation. Some kids showed more dysregulation than others. Some bounced back more. But the pattern held up even when the researchers controlled for things like current socio-economic status, current stress levels, or whether kids had developed depression. This was bigger than just being sad now. This was coded into their physiology. So what does this actually mean for someone reading this? Let's be concrete. If you experienced abuse as a kid, this research suggests your body might still be paying the price in measurable ways. Not in some vague trauma is bad way, but in actual biological aging acceleration. That has implications. If your body's systems are dysregulated, that explains why trauma survivors have higher rates of almost every age-related disease you can name. Heart disease, stroke, metabolic problems. You're not just dealing with a mental health aftermath, you're dealing with accelerated wear and tear on the machinery. But here's the part that matters. Knowing the problem is half the battle. If physiological age is real and measurable, that means it might be addressable. Not necessarily reversible, but improvable. The study itself doesn't test interventions, so we don't know yet what actually helps. But the framework exists now. There are limitations to name. This is correlational, not experimental. We're not saying maltreatment causes dysregulation in a causal sense, though it sure looks that way. And the sample was relatively small and demographically specific. We need bigger, more diverse studies. We need to know if physiological age can actually be reversed or just slowed. We need to understand why some kids show more dysregulation than others. Is it genetics, the severity of maltreatment, protective factors they had? Those questions matter because they point to intervention. This work sits in a growing field that's trying to understand trauma not as a mental health problem primarily, but as a biological one. Other researchers are looking at epigenetics, whether maltreatment changes which genes get expressed. Others are mapping trauma onto brain structures. What Shalev and his team did was take all of that molecular knowledge and ask a bigger question. What does it look like when you zoom out and look at the entire system? The answer is that childhood maltreatment might be one of the most significant biological age accelerators we know of. That's a massive public health statement. It suggests that preventing child abuse isn't just a moral imperative, it's a preventive medicine issue. Every year of maltreatment prevented might be literal years added back to someone's lifespan. The next big question is intervention. Can therapy help? Can exercise? Can targeted medical treatment? We don't know yet, but at least now we know what we're looking for. Turns out scientists have been busy, and they're not done yet.